Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. This is Gail of Gaia, and this is Free Range, and we have with us today Sherrie Saunders and Sterling Hill. And Sherrie has a very interesting background. She's an environmentalist,
Yes, ma'am.
and and I also was very happy to see that you are a medical freedom advocate.
Yes, ma'am.
I am right there with you. I've been saying that for years.
Yes, ma'am.
I hope that that happens someday. We should be able to have medical choice and informed consent, just like you
Absolutely.
mentioned.
The Constitution gives us both the rights to have medical freedom and the freedom of choice on what route of medication or medical treatment. Medical freedom to us means that we have a right to choose how we are treated in a medical environment. If we choose to have a holistic treatment plan, if we choose to refuse something like a vaccination, we should have the right to do so. The absolute right of choice and dignity to our body and persons. We can't give that away to anyone. That right belongs to us by God. You can't take that away.
Amen. I couldn't agree more, and that's wonderful that you're bringing that out. Because that is something that's very important. For example,
It's the most
our
important thing. In fact, I don't know why there's a question. There
yeah,
can
really.
be no question. Why? Who gave the authority of our body to another man? Because no man on this planet has authority over me. Only God has
Yeah,
authority over me. So
and
who
she,
gave the right
The
to a
American
man
Medical Association had a
or a
lot to do with
government or
the big pharma.
propaganda? Who gave a right to a corporation, which the
Exactly.
United States government is a corporation? So who gave authority to a corporation to have autonomy over my body? That only God has the right to speak of and for. I don't understand why there's even a question.
I agree with you. There shouldn't be a question.
yeah, and Sherry, like myself, we've both been to Washington D.C. to fight to get poisons out of food or to, the medical freedom to defend the medical freedom of all these innocent children that are being forced with these death needles.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, and chemotherapy, that's another one that's
Yeah.
horrendous that they will force on children if the parents are not in favor of it. And I don't know who would be, want to get mustard gas, but the propaganda has been so um, outlandish that and ingrained in people that they actually believe things that are not true, and it's very sad. And
Well, not only does the medical establishment feel like they have a right over our body, but in collaboration with the medical establishment, our government, which is represented by CPS or DHR or Family Services in your state, depending on what it's locally called. Here, it is Department of Human Resources in Alabama. In our Department of Human Resources, there are gentlemen and ladies who believe that it is their right to take your children from you when you have a disagreement with a medical decision. For example, should you deny the right to the hospital to inject your child with mustard gas and want to take maybe a holistic route where you use natural herbs, diet changes, cannabis in order to halt the process of the cancer itself, which happens all the time in people who choose holistic type ways of dealing with their cancer. Uh, this the way that it is created in our state and in all others, because folks, I don't just work in environmentalism. I cross trained a little bit in family advocacy, and so here in Alabama, I am recognized locally in Montgomery as an advocate for families who are fighting to have their children given back to them that have been wrongfully taken, stolen by the state. And many of those reasonings that they use to take your children are medical decision related. And when you go against the hospital in a medical decision, the hospital will use its relationship, and it has one, folks. I speak on authority. Although I am under a gag order, I am allowed to say that I was a former employee of Huntsville Hospital. While I was employed there, I was a graduate through their corporate university, which is a management training program, about an 18-month management training program. I was given intimate inside knowledge of the hospital and how it works, from the CEO down to literally the bottom bowels of the hospital.
Well, can you enlighten us on that?
Inside and out. And I can tell you, and anybody listening, that your hospital has a business relationship with the local family services department. They do business together, folks. And sometimes the hospital, for example, I am now speaking as Sherrie Saunders again, no longer an employee or have any a relationship with Huntsville Hospital, so that all the lawyers who I've signed paperwork with at this point understands. Now I'm speaking as Sherrie Saunders, the advocate, no longer the employee, once again. Hospitals sometimes use that business relationship to cover medical malpractice. For example, should your child be born in a hospital and then properly, according to the hospital, vaccinated, and then have a brain injury, you can be used as a scapegoat. The parent, I say you, I meant the parent, can be used as a scapegoat. There will be some charge libelously made against them. CPS or DHR will come in and take the child. The hospital gets off from being sued for medical malpractice, or if it was a surgery mistake, whatever. I'm just throwing things out there for people to understand what I'm trying to say. Your hospital is not your friend. They work with DHR. They are in collaboration with these people to steal your child. It happens every day of the week.
Isn't there an incentive there for
Yes.
CPS, monetary? Yeah.
There is a, for lack of a better term, a finder's fee. When a complaint is lodged, the employee, the nurse, usually it's a nurse or a doctor, they are in a financial relationship where a finder's fee, which is covered under the Title IV program, where your Social Security funds are used to support the entire child welfare, child foster care system. This entire thing is supported from our Social Security money through Title IV funding that the federal government has in collaboration with these states. So through that funding, there is a stipend set aside to pay people to offer information to their local Department of Human Resources, so that you get a finder's fee. Yes, Gail, you are absolutely correct.
It's always follow the money.
You know, being an advocate myself, and working with a lot of the wackadoodle injured children, I'll get the calls sometimes, the weirdest times of night, 11, 12, 1 a.m. Just had to rush my 14-year-old son to the ER. I'm at a downtown Chicago hospital. I'm trying to hold back what I'm saying, because if I tell them that he can't have that drug or he can't have that food, they'll bring in CPS and then they'll take my rights away. But I'm really scared. Can you hurry up and find me a lawyer? Can you find me a doctor that can run in here and help me? And I mean, I get in this where I've got to get in action mode, and I've got to call all the big doctors and lawyers I know in Chicago that I have a list, a catalog of. And this kind of stuff happens. Sherrie is absolutely right every day. And then I even have a friend in New Orleans that works for a big law firm. And right now they've been handling a case for 2 years where the mother was murdered. The father was nowhere to be found, but the mother's family could have been reached and accessible. But a very wealthy family wanted this child right when this child got put in foster care, and they got paid. CPS got paid a big amount of money through this family to illegally adopt this child. Now it's 2 years later, and the mother who was murdered, her family has spent almost $100,000 over 2 years trying to get their family member back, this small child. Stuff like this happens all of the time. Sherrie is absolutely right. I mean, it's so corrupt.
Let's talk about what's going on right now in terms of well, the pending vaccadoodle, but that's not the concern right now. What I'm saying is hospitals get a certain amount of money with a diagnosis of CV. They get a certain amount of money if they're put on a ventilator, and they get a certain amount of money if their death is CV. So
that is correct.
Every single one of them, right? And that is diabolical.
To understand what it means to go in the hospital, I need folks to listen to what I'm fixing to say. In my experience working, I learned that it is not about the patients living. They really don't care if you make it. It's not about your loved one. It's not about you. The bottom line, the bottom dollar, the decision-making information that matters to these people that have your life, literally your life on the table, is financial. Depending how much money you will receive from either the insurance policy, the state Medicaid or Medicare agency, the federal, depending on how much money they can get given to them. That is the reason that they use to make the protocol for the medical treatment that you will receive. So if you walk into that hospital with insurance, you know right off the bat, while you're in the emergency room bleeding, you've stuck yourself with a knife. I mean, you're trying to deal with the blood loss, and there's someone there asking, are you insured? Can I have your insurance information? Right off the bat. Yeah. They want to know exactly what financially, the liability that you are as a patient. They need to know right off the bat, and that dictates your treatment.
That's pathetically sad.
I hope you understand what I'm trying to say, folks. I love each and every one of you. I don't know you. I don't have to. I know that I am here, you are here, and we are of the great one spirit. And I am trying to give you some information to help you make medical decisions. You need to know that you matter nothing to this hospital. It comes down to the financial black line, red line goals, and these goals are met weekly. So that's something else you need to know. The hospital doesn't look at its finances at the end of the month. They look at their finances at a 7-day cycle. That means every 7 days, that hospital and the nurse manager that's running the floor, and this falls under the nurse manager. The nurse manager running that floor, her goal is not patient care or making sure that everybody's got their meals on time. That she could care less. Her job is to sell a service and a product, and to make sure that the products and services are sold. So if they have a couple of patients just on their floor for that week, you better get ready, because you're going to find out that you need all these tests and all these services done to you, because they've got to make money. It's a 5-day cycle, Monday through Friday. They crunch the numbers over the weekend. Monday morning, 7:45 a.m. in the CEO meeting, and I've been there, you will know what financial stats you had from the last 5 days. And the hospital makes its decisions based on these numbers. Not one time in my experience did I ever have a high-ranked employee in making decisions at the 6th largest hospital system in the South, which is where I worked. They had over 7,500 employees. It's the 6th largest system in the South. So this is not some small local county hospital. I work for one of the big boys, and I'm telling you straight up, not one time did they ever bring out grandma in the meeting. They never said, you know what, we did a great job last week with Mr. Paul down there. You know, he had that heart attack and all. They never one time said anything about any patients. It's not about the patients. I don't know how else to say it.
It's most certainly not. And I would like to add, you know, when you don't have insurance and when you do have insurance, how you've got to get treated. Back in 1995, I got in a car wreck. My head hit a utility pole and then got the dome light, and I fractured my skull, blood on the brain, you know, dissected my carotid eventually from it, lost the tendon here, have detached ligaments here. Now, eventually, they cut me from my ear to my throat to save my life. But when I got sent into the ER, I did not have insurance. And I can remember there was one young doctor who was like, no, she has neck fracture. She has skull fracture. We've got to keep her. And the other two doctors were like telling him to shut up and that she was being released. And they gave me a shot of Demerol, screaming bloody murder, and sent me out the hospital. All right. Then, so we had Charity Hospital, which was the number one and the busiest trauma unit. You ready for this? In the world. Charity of New Orleans. So more emergencies per capita than any other hospital in the world. And so I was having to go there, and sometimes I would have to lay on the floor for 3 days. Yeah, for 3 days. You would bring a little pillow and a blanket, and sometimes they would kick you and tell you to get up off the floor. All right. And then after going so many times, they would try to put you in psych meds or eventually lock you in their psych ward at Charity. So then I finally get insurance several years later, because that's when I started dating Roy, the surgeon, and he saw I was in pretty bad shape and said, we got to get you health insurance. There's something going on. And he's the one that discovered the carotid dissection in my neck and stuff. And when I had insurance, it was totally different. They wanted to fix the carotid dissection. They wanted to go and do the back surgery. They wanted to remove the gallbladder. They wanted to hurry up and do all this. And I'm like thinking, whoa, I got treated like dirt when I was poor, just poor like trash. Now I'm with a doctor and I got his insurance and I'm pulling up in his Jaguar. They want to take everything out of me. They can because they know they're going to get the money. And that's what it is about. Because I've experienced it, and Sherrie is absolutely right.
I like to tell people the way it is, and that's why sometimes I make a lot of friends and sometimes a few enemies.
Let me ask you this. Is there a quota, a surgery quota for doctors?
Yes.
Yeah. Could you
there is
expand on that a little bit?
The way that hospitals recruit doctors are their numbers. So a hospital is not going to take a chance on a brand new surgeon just straight out of college. Those surgeons go to the research hospitals, and then they get the experience, and then they can get a better job on down the road. A hospital CEO has the bottom line to worry about. So he recruits surgeons with good numbers, meaning that you live through the surgery and infection rates were low, and that there was a low need to go back for another surgery or to fix something that went wrong with the first surgery. All these numbers come in together to crash these numbers. So they use, the best candidate that has these numbers I just described, and those are the ones that they go after. Now, when a doctor then is hired at the hospital, the doctor himself writes a contract with the hospital itself. So the surgeon is a contracted employee of the hospital. So at any moment that the hospital senses there is a dangerous liability, they can cut and run so that the hospital won't suffer the legal blowback from any damage that the independent contract employee, the surgeon, causes with, say, a bad day. They show up, maybe they're a DUI, maybe he had a headache, it doesn't matter. Maybe he just forgot what he was doing on the table. But sometimes things like that happen.
That's scary thought.
It happens. It happens. My ex was a cardiovascular surgeon, and they removed him out of the surgery room one time because he was drinking his wild turkey. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a business, and it's cutthroat business. So surgeons sometimes won't take a patient because of its surgical liability to their own math equation, which is why certain hospitals, like that hospital chain, the Cancer Centers for America, you know, they only take certain cancer patients. They don't want every cancer patient because they want those that they can have a high rate of success so that they can turn around on its business model and sell that back as a advertisement, like in its retail advertisement. Well, we have a 85% or 95% rate of curing cancer. Well, great, but you only treated like 14 different kinds. You didn't treat this brain one over here.
Absolutely not.
Don't treat that. So hospitals and its numbers, people need to understand, just like any other business, the hospital makes decisions so that it can create the best numbers for its situation, because the federal government chooses how much money it will give to the hospital in response to a bill, say, for example, a Medicaid or a Medicare bill. So the hospital sends in a bill for $5,000. Well, the federal government and its guidelines and its commissioning of that agency decided that you're only worth 85% reimbursement because you had low scores on reinfection rates. So because your reinfection rates were high, the federal government punishes you and it lowers the reimbursement rate back to the hospital. So if people didn't know that, you need to understand that the hospital doesn't receive its full 100% funding, its bill paid from the government, unless its numbers are in a great range so that it can achieve that 100% reimbursement. I know Sterling knows what I'm talking about.
I would like to add in that right here. All right, the guy who runs the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, I've met him a few times. When they were, when the Institute of Functional Medicine was introducing my app in Austin, Texas, we had about 25,000 doctors there learning about my app and nutrigenomics and epigenetics. The guy from the Cancer Treatment Centers from America, that was one of the times I met him. I met him before that because he was the one who owned the bariatric ones. Treatment Centers of America. And it just so happened my ex, Roy, who was the cardiovascular surgeon, was one of the top bariatric surgeons in the world with one of the lowest infection rates in the world and lowest death rates. So guess who picked him up really fast? Yep. He left Pennsylvania and he headed to outside of Chicago, right outside of Rockford, Illinois, where they had one of the Bariatric Treatment Centers of America clinics, and they took him on really fast. He was making about, you ready for this? $2 million a year.
Yeah.
As a surgeon.
Hospitals, let me add something else back to what we were previously talking about. Mm-hmm. When hospitals go after the surgeons for their numbers, the hospital itself is willing to make, how do I say this? Concessions. the hospital will make concessions for that surgeon, and you know, sometimes people like to do things their way. They like to do something their way, and when you're working a contract, you work that into the contract. I'm trying to say what I'm saying safely. Sterling, do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Okay, so the hospital is willing to work with the surgeon in a contract so that should something need to be covered or taken care of on the surgeon's side, the hospital is going to do that, take care of that. So that's something else you need to know, that even outside of the financials, we're talking about the financial reimbursements, even outside of that, folks, there's something else going on that you need to know about, that there's that inner handshake contract that the CEO of any hospital will allow a surgeon or a doctor be allowed to get away with in their hospital because they recruited them, they want to keep them. So sometimes you got to work a contract. So I just wanted y'all to know about that also.
I would like to add in what they do too. I was, you know, they hit the wrong person when it happened to me, because I broke my neck years ago, and you know, once a year I have to get all these certain tests, and so my doctor down in New Orleans would like to, instead of me going all over the place for 3-4 months and paying all these copays, hospitalize me for about a 24-hour period and have them go and do all the tests on me and then let me go. And this one particular time, they only had room on the cardiac stroke wing. So I'm in there just as a regular patient, right? And I wake up the next morning and this lady's coming in with a pill. Here's your medicine. And I'm like, whoa, why am I on medication? I'm here for tests. I'm not sick. I'm just getting routine tests. And she said, no, it's your Lipitor. It's required. Yeah. It is required that everybody on the cardiac stroke wing have Lipitor, and they went off on the wrong.
Oh my God.
Wait, they went off of the wrong.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was going back to, the nurse manager. Folks, you bet if you get into a hospital and you got some money in your checking account, you need to put that in your wallet, and you need to make sure that you keep your wallet with you in the hospital, and you start feeding some bills to the nurse manager, because that's the person that comes down to the decision on whether or not you're going to live or die outside of the surgeon. And I'm just saying, you want to make sure the nurse manager is happy on that floor, because it comes down to financials. And I hate to be the one to burst the bubble there. We all thought that these hospitals and these doctors in their white coats were our friends. Folks, I thought they were too. I didn't get that job at the hospital because I hated doctors. At the time that I took the job, I still had hope. I had hope in mankind in the hospital. And this is even after I had already discovered through my time in the military that they were lying to us about the vaccadoodles and the other things going on. So even though I had discovered that I had been lied to once, I was hoping that if I went back into the medical establishment and worked again, that it would work out this time. And that's not what happened. What happened was I found out for the second time that I had been lied to. And maybe that's what the Lord meant all along, giving me the knowledge and the skill to get the jobs that I got, to get me to the place where I was, where I could find out that, wow, we really don't matter, and they are going to kill us all. And I hope to God I got some money in my wallet, because I'm fixing to die if I don't. That's really the way it is. And I hate to be the one to drop that, but it is what it is.
It sure is, and it's amazing. And that's been the downfall of humanity in so many ways, because we have trusted people that we think actually care about us, and it's not us that they care about. It's the bottom line that they care about.
It is literally the bottom line. I swear.
And isn't the other part? that really bothers me is that most people aren't aware that just about in every single field, it's in the healthcare field, it's in the education field, it's in the legal field, everything's a business. And the bottom
It is.
It's
line
corrupt.
is what matters.
Every bit of it is corrupt to the core. I know. I wanted to lead out with one more thing regarding the medical, because we know how the pharmaceutical representatives claw into the doctors, and so Roy would come home and he'd say, yeah, this is how I look at it. When a patient comes in with symptom A, B, or C, and a pharmaceutical representative that walked into my door a week ago, oh yeah, I remember that pharmaceutical rep with that nice set of tits, man, and she offered me a cruise and dinner. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna give her product to this patient. Roy actually admitted that to me, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I was slapped awake when I lived with him. I know you guys gotta laugh away. It's hilarious, but that's how he thought.
Look.
Well, that's why they always would pick
Not
these nice looking
hilarious for
women to
the
be these reps to go into the doctor's office and convince the doctors of what to use. They spent, and this was years ago that this figure comes from, they used to spend somewhere around $40,000 per doctor per year on little perks and little vacations or TVs or a year past the NFL or
Look,
NBA, whatever.
in my experience, I'm fixing to drop another story. In my experience, I know that, for example, a manager of a department, say in a hospital, any hospital, will work diligently all year to cut every corner so that come in December, at the end of the financial year in the hospital, the incentive payment that is given 2 weeks before Christmas at some hospitals here in America, I can say on authority, I know one friend of mine who got $35,000 in their end of the year incentive Christmas stash from the hospital. That money came directly from cutting corners in a department that was in charge of every single piece of equipment that was authorized to be used in a hospital. Once again, head of the department responsible for every piece of equipment, live tissue, dead tissue, cotton ball, used in a hospital. $35,000 in one paycheck as a Christmas bonus?
That's sickening.
Really? Yeah, it happened.
People just have no idea. Just like
that was just in 1 year.
That's
That was in 1 year.
unbelievable. It's just like the incentive that oncologists get that don't other doctors don't get that same level. They get a percentage. I think it's like 6%, something like that, of whatever the chemo regimen
Well,
costs.
you want to hear about the Vaccadoodle incentive for pediatricians?
Yeah, the $400.
Oh no, it's a little more than $400. A thriving practice of four pediatricians.
Yeah, tell that story.
Do you remember the doctor's name up in Michigan? Slazak, or I forget what his name is. Paulie Tommy had interviewed him, and when they after an infant passed on from a Vaccadoodle within an hour, they knew that once they started investigating Vaccadoodles, they weren't as good as what they thought. So they stopped meeting the requirements for their bonuses. And they stopped several years back, and the bonuses weren't that big yet. But he said right now, if their thriving practice would be reaching that goal, that Vackadoodle goal, with those total of 4 pediatricians, they would bring in $1.7 million in bonuses off of 4 doctors on Vackadoodles in a pediatric clinic. Do you see why the pediatricians turn a blind eye? Because they don't care about your kid. They care about that Mercedes-Benz note. They care about that big old house note, their nice vacation, their child's Ivy League college payment. Okay, they don't care about your kid. Screw your kid. Screw if I'm going to brain damage your kid. I'm making my clinic, my 4 doctors, the 4 doctors total are banking on $1.7 million a year in bonuses on Vackadoodles.
Yeah, when I said 400, what I was referring to was every
child.
vaccine per child.
Yeah,
but they get more than that too.
And they don't get exactly, that's just Blue Cross, but they don't get exactly 400 a child. They've got to have so many to get the $400 a child. If they don't have the so many, the one that they Vackadoodle, they don't get it. So they've got to have, like let's say they have 90, let's say 100 patients, they've got to have at least 95 of them Vackadoodled to get the $400 from each, or they get 0. Do you see why now?
The incentive there to do something that actually harms is absolutely appalling, that it's used as an incentive. And
I couldn't live with myself.
The drug company reps, when they come in with their new pill, for example, a doctor who has gotten used to prescribing a pill that's been on the market for years, he or she is used to this pill, used to hearing his patients, how they feel on it. He's used to this pill. Well, there's a new pill on the market. There's a new company that's come out with a new program. And when that representative walks into that office, he has to walk in there to convince this doctor to change the way that he or she has been doing things. The only way you can convince somebody to change the way they're doing things is either, one, the information you're showing them is just so beautiful and grand that they just accept it, or there is a financial reasoning behind it. So when they walk into that office with their new pill to sell, there are financial goals that they will get and receive by the continued script. The prescription pad is part of the problem of the medical establishment. Each pad, each script that goes out of that office is counted towards the incentive program for the independent or individual drug companies that the doctor or the hospital is contracted with. So know that when a new drug comes on the market, that commercial that you see on TV, and they like to put the commercials on TV first so you'll recognize the name, when the doctor says, well, I see that I've been treating you for 10 years for your psoriasis, but I'm going to try something new. Look at this thing right here. And you're like, wow, I saw that on TV. It has to be great. And all that is just how the doctors pay themselves incentives, not just through the hospital by saving money, but also through its contracts that it has with the pharmaceutical companies that the hospital allows the doctors to have business relationships with inside their hallways. So that is another way your doctor is given incentive payment, and that is the script that walks out that door. You walk it to the pharmacy, the pharmacist is filling that script, making everybody happy.
So Sherrie, I wanted to ask you this question. You remember when I was in the hospital and I told you I was going in there for tests, and they tried to give me Lipitor that morning, and I went my cray on them.
That was protocol. That was a protocol.
Now, listen, what I wanted to ask you is somebody there making a bonus for that happening? Are they getting a big check for that?
Well, yes, in a way. because the amount of prescriptions that come into the hospital, when the shipment of product came into the warehouse at the hospital I worked at, we paid for this box, and there was bottles of pills in a box. We paid for this box. Now, what the hospital charges per pill to the patient is completely different from what I'm sure, paid in an invoice to pay for a box of these pills. So when it comes down to, does the hospital get an incentive for the pill? Yes, because the hospital is buying these pills from a retailer that the pharmaceuticals are allowed to be sold through. You can't buy these pharmaceuticals except through certain medical retailers. You can't get this at Walmart, the pills and the products like live bone or dead bone, depending, the valves that goes into the hearts during heart surgery and things like that. You have to buy these through certain individuals or businesses that carry this product. So the incentive to buy bulk Lipitor, probably in a price cut, but on an individual level, it's not so much that one person getting the incentive, Sterling, as the hospital selling a service. So the hospital sold you the pill. Then it sold you the service of the nurse giving you the pill. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so they probably made like 1,000% markup on that.
Oh yeah.
Tried to give me that pill. I basically should shove the pill back up her ass.
Because in my experience, again, I know a hospital likes to expect on reimbursement from insurance that when giving a vaccadoodle to a newborn in the baby unit, the nursing or labor unit, labor and delivery, I'll get it right here in a second. In labor and delivery, where you have your baby, that service itself, giving the shot, was upwards of $900, just the service. Then you pay for the shot. So the way a hospital works is the product and then the service to give you the product. So you pay for the respiratory medicine, then you pay for the guy to come into the room to stick that thing on your nose and to flip the oxygen on and to walk out of the room. So you're getting that breathing treatment for 5 minutes, but you only saw him for 30 seconds. But for that 30 seconds, he came in and put that mask on your face and walked out of the room. He charged your insurance company $1,700 for the service of putting the mask on your face.
Wow. That reminds me, I was on a pharmacy and therapeutic committee once at a mental hospital, and I was advocating making some dietary changes as for schizophrenia and using more of the B vitamin. But anyway, I didn't last on that committee very long. But I had no idea at that time how much incentive and how much money the hospital was getting from the drugs that they were doling out to patients who were begging to go off of them because they were giving them tics or they were making them drool or they were.
Right.
It was horrific. It was absolutely horrific. And I felt so bad for the patients, and yet they would not do anything different in any manner, shape, or form because they were making too much money from the pharmaceutical companies to keep pushing those drugs on patients. It just made them worse.
Oh, yeah, I've been up here at the VA hospital in Shreveport, Louisiana before, and had a meeting with their mental health unit. Oh my God! Because one of our family friends here, her son got vaccadoodles when and then went off to Afghanistan. By the time he came back, he was full blown schizophrenic, and and they pulled out the list of medicines and showed me, and his mother was there, and we're all sitting down, and I asked them simple questions like, have you done neurotransmitter testing on him? Do you see where his dopamine, epi, norepi is, his GABA, his glutamate, his excitatory neurotransmitters? And these are doctors, and they're looking at me like, we don't have those tests. And I'm like, you
Right.
got to be kidding me. And then you've got MSG in his food. To give us schizophrenic monosodium glutamate, you're going to make them even more unstable. They can't break down the excitotoxins. That's why they're schizophrenic in the first place. And Sherrie, I know you probably know a lot more about this than I do.
Well, when you brought up food, I just wanted to put that information back out.
Mhm.
The diet in a hospital when you're a patient, I'm sure people who have been inside of a hospital realize that the food that is brought to you is nearly unedible. So,
I used to work in a hospital. I was a dietitian, so I got a lot of experience in that. And I'll never forget the one time when they came up with this new and wonderful way to have heated food, and it was to put it in the microwave just before they brought it to the room.
Well,
boy,
sure
just
you
destroy
didn't-
all the nutrients.
I'm
as
almost
bad as
positive
it
you
is.
did not last long knowing what you know about nutrition, Gail. I am almost positive. But do you know, I want to tell you, because you guys know I went through a bad health journey after the neck thing and everything. I went through a lot. So I was in and out of hospitals. So one time I got admitted. And anyway, I had a friend of mine, Steve Kenai, he used to own these chains called Smoothie King all around the world. And yeah, he was a friend of mine. And he was bringing me some Kangen water. He brought me a 5-gallon drum of it and set it in my room. And then one of my other friends was bringing me like organic salads from Whole Foods and stuff because they knew I wouldn't eat the food in there or touch the water. And I had the dietitian came in and asked me why wouldn't I eat their food. And I said, well, because I'm chronically ill, so I try to eat organic and as healthy as I can, and I prefer not to have the tap water with the fluoride. So my friend Steve, that owns all the Smoothie Kings, he brought me over some good healthy water. And anyway, about 30 minutes later, guess what? The psychiatrist walks in and asked me if I had ever been diagnosed with schizophrenia. I had an irrational fear of their food and water.
Oh
And
my God.
I just about flipped because I'm thinking, okay, in my mind, I'm not going to eat that shit out of a can that's GMO'd or the tap water full of fluoride. No telling if the pipes are lead or whatever. I'm trying to get well so I can get the hell out of this hospital. I'm not going to eat their garbage or drink their toxic waste tap water.
And you know what? I used to complain all the time. The food service would be the last place that they would ever increase the budget. And so they weren't making any money off of it. So it was just costing them the money as they saw it. So they weren't willing to, buy organic food or change the diet to something that would be more healthy. They just won't do it. I'm very frustrated by all that.
I don't believe the federal government or insurance companies reimburses for food costs. That's right. And I'm going to leave it at that.
It's quite disheartening. After I had left the hospital that time, I was traumatized by that, by the way, guys. And my doctor, Dr. James P. Carter, he was actually part of Dr. Mary's Monkey. They just kept him out of the book. And he actually did a study. With NIH, he got a study on IV chelation and proved he had over 3,000 patients with atherosclerosis in that study and reversed every one of their atherosclerosis with CoQ10, vitamin C, and IV EDTA. And they buried the research. But when I went in his office and I told him, and he didn't like having a website or anything. He was always paranoid because he was involved. He worked with Mary Sherman from Dr. Mary's Monkey and, Judith Berry Baker. He worked with all of them. And so he used to stay kind of low key. And I can remember he said my mailing list, because he would snail mail people stuff, updates and stuff from his clinic. And he'd say, he said, I'm sorry. I said, laugh away, Dr. Carter. He said, honey, you're not crazy. The system is broken. Don't worry. But he said, I'd love to share the story. He was laughing so hard, I thought he was going to pee his pants. When he thought because he actually, Steve was one of his patients too from Smoothie King. And when I was telling Steve was bringing me the water and Will was bringing me the salads, another one of his patients, and he was just laughing so hard because he said, oh my God, I cannot believe they tried to diagnose you with a psychiatric disorder for wanting to drink good water and eat healthy. I mean, he about flipped.
Well, what happened was when you said that, you gave them the opportunity to offer you a new service.
You know what? You know what I say to their service?
If you tell them that your feet are cold, they're going to give you a new service. I think you need a test. You need to find out whether or not you got good blood flow in your feet.
Oh my God. Yeah, the whole system is rigged. It's rigged. It's broke. It needs to be totally redone.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If the nurse manager finds out you got good insurance, it's on, baby. It's on now.
You're gonna get every test you can imagine. And
yeah, it just recently happened to my son. He got an upgrade in insurance with his job before he got laid off from all this BS going on, and he calls me up, and I was still living in New Orleans, and he says, Mom, I got a bad gallbladder. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, I went to the doctor and I got a real bad gallbladder and they got to take it out. I said, son, you never have right shoulder pain. You're never consistently burping and stuff. I said, that's one of the signs. You don't hurt under your rib cage there. I said, go look at your poop. Is it dark brown and does it sink? And he says, Mom, that's embarrassing. I said, does your poop sink and is it dark brown? And he said, yeah. And I said, then your gallbladder's working. He lost that insurance and then he got the state insurance, right, when this crap went down. And he went, no concern, not believing me. And they looked and they said, there's nothing wrong with your gallbladder. Do you see what happens when you... So you go from one extreme to where when you have no insurance, they will let you die. And when you have good insurance, they will take out and fix anything they can possibly.
They're going to bleed you dry, man. They're going to bleed you dry.
They don't care what they can do.
Oh my, that's so pathetic. It's so pathetic.
Gail, it is. I don't see how long did you last in that hospital, Gail? I know you had to leave so fast. I usually
couldn't last much longer than a year at most hospitals.
I can't believe you lasted a year. I go nuts on them in 2 weeks. Y'all know I was offered to be fast-tracked through a major medical school.
I was taken off of that therapeutic pharmacy and therapeutic committee in 3 months.
Didn't take long. I was fast-tracked.
They didn't like what I was saying.
I was offered to be fast-tracked and go right into internship with all my knowledge and everything. And I had to turn it down. One, I told them, I said, it would take me, the first patient to walk in the room and knowing what I know about drugs and DNA and how the body works, I would be ripping that medication out of your hands and saying, no, let's try this herb and root. Let's try this food. Let's get this vitamin. Let's get this amino acid in them. Y'all would throw me out the first day. I said, absolutely no. I would have never made it through medical school knowing what I know.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much more. So I don't know if Sterling, I imagine where you're at down there in Louisiana, there's a market for what I'm fixing to drop.
Oh, this sounds good.
Yeah, I'm going to drop it. Okay.
All right, good.
we need to know, folks, I know you need to know that if you're African, you have a product on your skin. It's called melanin. Melanin. Melanin is that gives you the color, the black color. That melanin itself is priceless. For example, if you're in Huntsville, Alabama, and for example, you're in the county jail and you die in the jail, you're black, you're sent to a local hospital. And the morgue will, if your local funeral home doesn't, the morgue and the people working there or the people in the funeral home will take a knife, a scalpel, and they will take the skin from about here down. They will skin you down to your ankles. And the reason why is because when they put the clothes on you in the casket, you're usually seeing from about here up. So they don't want the loved ones to catch on to what they're doing. The local funeral homes know exactly what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about because I worked a case a couple of years ago where a homeless man who had family in Huntsville, although he was homeless, he had a drinking problem, he had a mental health condition, and he chose to be homeless, even though he had a wife and children in the town. He was murdered by the ambulance driver who forcibly slammed his head on the cement of a hotel on University Drive. The family members contacted an organization that I am familiar with and I worked with, a homeless advocacy group. Right after the man was found, injured there and died in the hospital, his family contacted me. So within a day of this man's death, I was already on the case. So I want to set the scene. What happened was when he got to the funeral home, the wife, who no one expected because she did not step into the scene until after the funeral. So what they didn't know, folks, at the funeral home and at the hospital at the time of his death was that he had a wife and children in town. That happened later. That gave the hospital enough time to remove all of his organs. They took out everything in his gut and stuffed it with newspaper. And that's how he was found at the funeral home. Now, he was white. The other story I was working at the time, at the exact same time that I found out this homeless man was just deboweled by a local hospital in Huntsville, Alabama, without his family giving consent, was that a family member had made a decision to change the clothing that a loved one, an African loved one, was going to be wearing on that final day. And when they made the change of the clothing, they found from here down to their ankles had been skinned. You can imagine what this loved one felt like to find out that grandma was skinned to her ankles. It opened up an investigation that me and another homeless advocacy group at the time I was working with and was the director of a homeless advocacy group in Huntsville, Alabama. So between my group and this other group, we did an investigation into these matters. I want you guys to know that I carried this information not only to the local police department, not only to the local district attorney, I also carried it to the FBI office downtown Huntsville, Alabama. Now, y'all haven't heard anything about this story because after I gave my information to the FBI, nothing was ever done.
Why did they do that?
This market, Gail, for melanin that is removed from black folks after death is an expensive market. It is upwards of, isn't it, Sterling, $1,400 a gram for melanin? It is outrageous, the cost of melanin. Melanin is used in medical establishment. I mean, the pharmaceutical company isn't skinning people for nothing. And you think somebody's going to volunteer to have their skin given to the pharmaceutical company? So how else are they getting melanin that they're selling and using as a service and a product? There's only one way. I brought this story to the FBI office in Huntsville, Alabama. They did nothing with it. I could get the local district attorney and the people involved to care anything about it. Nobody cared. The only people who seemed to care was the family members who contacted my organization, the other homeless organization, and the few people I could get to listen. Most people wanted to shut their doors and wanted me to shut up. When I literally got pushed out of the district attorney's office in Madison County, literally hands on me, pushing me out the door. They didn't want to hear it, because to hear it and to understand, it would have been to expose. So on your show, I'm thankful for the opportunity to expose something in the medical establishment that most people had never even thought to imagine. If your body is not claimed immediately and it appears as if you have no family members upon your death, you can imagine that you're going to be found at the local funeral parlor or funeral home with missing organs, because they're going to sell your organs. They're going to remove them upon your death. And in fact, they're going to help you along in that death, which is what happened to this poor homeless man. There was a decision made to remove some supportive equipment.
Doctors make those decisions, though, too, don't they?
Within 3 hours, within 3 hours of admission, when they found out he was a homeless man. His name was John Whiskey, in fact. Instead of calling him John Doe on his paperwork, they put his name as John Whiskey because they assumed he was an alcoholic because he had the smell of alcohol upon admission after being dropped off in the emergency department by the local EMS. Once again, the hotel video equipment that I was able to obtain showed that the ambulance arrived in the parking lot to pick up a walking patient. He had a cut above his eye and possibly a concussion. He had had a fight. It had been into a fight. And his friend, the guy who stayed in the tent with him, called an ambulance to come and pick him up because he had that cut. He thought he needed to have stitches. So when they came to pick him up, the ambulance driver and this homeless gentleman had a argument. And in response of, it was 42 seconds, I believe 42 seconds after the driver of the ambulance stepped out of the ambulance and spoke to the homeless man. 42 seconds from the stepping out of the van, he put his hands on him, body slammed him to the ground, and slammed his head repeatedly back and forth on the pavement. When he arrived at the emergency room, he had a little bit more than a cut to his head. He had his brains coming out of his ears because he had been beat.
So do you think that
guy murdered him?
Yeah. Do you think that the EMS crew were probably part of this and making some money?
Yeah, we had the tape. We carried the video evidence that we obtained to the district attorney's office, to the police department, to Chief Mark McMurray himself. So I'm telling you guys that when I broke the one story with the homeless man having his guts ripped out because they didn't know he had a wife and kids in town, that broke that story, while at the same time I was breaking another story from a gentleman who had passed away in jail from a heart attack and was sent to the hospital first which is where the local morgue is. And then when he arrived at a funeral home 45 minutes outside of town, the family found that he had been skinned from his belly to his ankles. It was an amazing time in my life to have two stories going off at the same time. And they both involved a local hospital in a town at that time I was living in and working in. FBI cared nothing about what I just told you guys. But I want you to know, if you are black and in a hospital and then you die, you know, that's tragic. But you know how a hospital looks at this? They look at it as a financial opportunity, because melanin sells at an extremely high rate per gram. And there's only one way to get melanin, and that's through the skin of an African. So these unfortunate people that are dying in hospitals that may or may not have family around them at that time, and then being rushed from a hospital straight to a funeral home, straight to either an urn because they had the hospital or the funeral parlor, everyone made a decision that, well, because it's probably a COVID death, maybe we need to incinerate them instead of allowing their bodies to be preserved and then placed into a ground in a casket. So I'm not saying that that is what is happening, but Gail, I just dropped that on your show. I want people to know that this exists. I'm not crazy. I'm not dropping something.
I know you're not. Oh my God. I mean, I can pick my jaw off the floor right now.
Yeah, I wanted to, I didn't know when I was going to connect this for people, because this is information that I've had since 2013. 2013 is when,
you know what I'm thinking too now?
I started working in this advocacy. And when the death took place, that was 2014 was when the deaths took place. So I have known since that time that there was a problem with the removal of skin from black folks by either the hospital or the funeral home. And I say both because it can happen at both. Both places will have a contract with pharmaceutical companies. I know that I'm not the first person to talk about what happens to bodies at funeral homes. That people it's not nothing that anybody wants to hear. But I'm not the first person to drop this information. But I may be the first person to connect why there are a lot of African deaths in the hospitals, and that is because, once again, Africans carry in their skin something that white folks don't: melanin. Melanin is a product used in the pharmaceutical companies, and there's only one way to get it.
Oh my God.
I hope the FBI that I was talking to, I hope they get to see this. I hope other people get to see this. They can't say I didn't show up because I was on videotape in their office. They always record those meetings. So he can't say, the gentleman that I was sitting across at the desk, he can't say that I didn't tell him. I not only told him, I provided him what evidence I had at the time. I didn't just tell the FBI. Once again, I told the Huntsville Police Department and the Madison County District Attorney's Office.
Sadly, they just have the attitude, oh, it's just a homeless person, you know, that kind of attitude.
Oh, and it's, you know, look what they
inmate
did to the
or
prisoners.
Like
yeah, the prisoners. I don't know if you would want to share a little bit, because you have experience with the atrocities that go out in prisons, Gail. I mean,
well, yeah, one of the things that happened just recently was that I was aware of, where they moved an entire pod of inmates, and you know, they call them inmates, so they're make it impersonal. And anyway, and they moved some inmates into a room that had, for lack of a better word, shit smeared all over the walls, and locked them in there. I mean, that's like premeditated murder.
With a Franken V outbreak going on, and you're going to put them in.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, I don't care what crime you've done, whatever. Okay, humanity.
These were not these.
And these are pre-trial, right? They're not.
Yeah, they're not even convicted. They're not even convicted.
Sherrie, I know you've dealt with stuff like that too. I mean, I'm sure you've seen.
Oh, I've had a wonderful life. I can't believe the Lord has blessed me with so much, so many opportunities, and the stories that I'm able to speak about. I mean, I was a part of these stories, and I just want to give a shout out to the Lord, and I want to thank Him or her. Or however you want to look at it, the Great Spirit is one way I like to look at it. I want to give the Great Spirit a shout out for allowing me to be in the places that they have allowed me to be in at the times that they allowed me to be there, because I've had a great time, and I hope to have a lot more great times in working these stories. You talked earlier about Aaron Brockovich. I love that story. I love the idea that one person can become so important. And part of the reason why I like just jumping in and getting myself involved in the community is because I want to be known as someone who stood in my community and helped my fellow man. So it's a little bit selfish on my part that I do what I do, but I'm happy to be where I'm at.
I know, and I wanted to ask you something else too. Do you know? I know you're on a spiritual journey, like
yes, ma'am.
Like Gail and I are right now, and I know you're studying to be a shaman, right?
Absolutely,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit how, without kind of getting anyone?
Yeah, I'll speak as freely as I can.
Freely as you can. I know, because it's a lot of secret stuff that goes on there.
Well, I am a member of a Native American church that is located here in Blount County, Alabama. We have 40 acres of property, and on that property, we are creating an environment for an entheogenic experience. We are given the right in our church to have access to entheogenics like psilocybin, mushroom, peyote, cannabis, any plant.
What about ayahuasca?
And including ayahuasca. Any plant known to mankind is covered under the protection that our church is given, a charter that was originally given and then protected by Supreme Court rulings. We are a predominantly non-native. The fact that we're a Native American church is our charter that allows us to have access to the peyote, the cannabis, and the things that we use in our church. What we're doing, we are in active research with a local university. Members of our church itself is in active research for the use, for example, of psilocybin mushroom as a treatment for cocaine addiction. We know, for example, that having a psilocybin experience in the way that the Native Americans used psilocybin and peyote for their visions and their mystical experiences. In fact, their religion, their spirituality is through the use of these products from the earth. It's all natural and very safe to use. For hundreds of thousands of years, these products have existed, and peoples of this planet has used these products. So it is an amazing, it's an amazing opportunity that our church, and we have just a few hundred members in our church total, but nowhere near that many active. That we have right now, we're working on our fourth hut, we're going to call them, or buildings. We're breaking ground or have already broke ground on the sanctuary that we're building. Currently in this country, we are the only place to come to have an experience, to camp, to take medicine, to experience a Native American ceremony. If there's any other place in the United States, we don't know about it. So we're building, well, I'm just going to call it what it is, a drug rehab facility, a mental health facility on our property. We have our church members are encouraged to attend our ceremonies. During these ceremonies, I am our drummer, and I'm very honored to be our drummer. I also work with the pastor's wife, who is the herbalist. She's papered. She's gone to school for it. I work as a medicine woman towards what we do at this church. So from the time I was a child, Gail, to now, I have always felt that although I was a white girl, I have always felt Indian or Native. My daughter I named Lakota after an extremely wonderful band of people up in the Dakotas named the Lakota Sioux.
Oh, wow. I got to tell you something on that Lakota Sioux. I have two sons that are half Native American, and
beautiful.
they are a branch off of the Lakota Sioux, the Omahas.
My family, I live in North Alabama now, but my family is from South Alabama, so I have Creek blood, Native American Creek. And my children's father is Cherokee, has Cherokee blood. So I've got mixed race children between the Creek and Cherokee who didn't used to get along too good.
Well, my boy's father was full-blooded Indian, but I'm not any Indian that I know of.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was definitely generations ago. So I'm not claiming that I'm Native American. I'm a white girl, but
same here.
But in here, I feel very Native.
Yeah,
and
so
I have known my whole life that I was a little different, and
you too.
And so I have always sort of also known that I wanted to work in civil rights. Maybe that came from my mom, who also did, and I wanted to finish her work. But what I wanted to be before I wanted to finish my mom's work in civil rights, when I was a child, I wanted to be a medicine woman. I wanted to be a shaman. I know from my own experience with this psilocybin, literally the first experience, I can describe from the skills that I was born with. I'm a healer. In my family, it ran long past in the history. The women in my family, they lay hands, and they are healers. So I am a healer, and I want the use of our spirit elders. I want the use of them in the use of my medicine, even if I'm only medicining for myself or my family. This is not to make money with. People who know me know that I offer my services as a medic. I'm always a medic. I offer my services for free. I enjoy doing what I do because the Lord gave me the gift to do it. And so I want to become the kind of shaman that exists and existed in our past, and have their ability to cure and heal. People may not understand that the Native Americans, they didn't use hospitals. They didn't really use surgeons. And White Wolf, who is a member of our church, but he lives in Texas, He comes to our ceremonies, and I enjoy White Wolf. He's helping me. He's helping to train me. White Wolf told me this about natives, and he is Native American. Peyote is used to cure and fix everything. If you have a bellyache, you're going to eat some peyote. If you broke your leg, eat peyote. If your leg is still broke tomorrow, eat more peyote. At the end of the day, the Native Americans used peyote in not only their ceremonies to honor their spirit elders, they used peyote as medicine. So the use of psilocybin mushroom is not just to learn more about our spirit, to learn more about our universe and expand our mind there, that whole third eye. There's more to it than just that. The shamans could hold a ceremony, and during that ceremony, a shaman could literally take the poison or the sickness out of the person who lay before them that was sick, that the ceremony was for. I mean, isn't it to think about this, Gail? If I could get to the point in my medicine and in my research that I could go into a ceremony as these others before me and literally remove a cancer from someone's body and remove it, and
it can be done. It can be done.
I know it can.
I've seen
I
it.
know it can.
I
know. I know. So I mean, I'm trying. I'm shaking right now because.
Exciting.
Can you imagine? That's where I want to be.
Let me
at the end of the day, that's where I want to be.
I wanted to ask you one more thing with that, because I know I've been, Gail and I go on our own spiritual journeys as well, meditation, third eye, we know how to open it. And I know that the more that we go and we reach our higher self and go into that consciousness, the more awake we become, the more truth we find, and the more we find all this stuff is kind of messed up.
Just all of a sudden appears.
But has that helped you in your journey too? Have you felt the same the more you go and you open that third eye, and the more you go up into higher consciousness? And this was all called evil. They didn't want us to know how powerful we are, not where we are. And
well,
powerful.
The government shut down research that was going on during the 60s into the use of LSD, psilocybin. Not only did the government shut this research down, but the church was also involved when shutting it down, because the church's point of view was that people would walk away from the church God, that they wouldn't go to church anymore to worship God if they realized that they were God and were a piece of God themselves. What people need to realize is that through the use of these entheogenics, you understand that not only are you a spiritual being, when you die, you don't die. You go from this shell, this putrid shell of this. I mean, when you think about it, it's gross to live in this body of putrid flesh and bowels.
Meat suit.
Oh yeah, you guys must have saw my post earlier, right?
Well, I didn't see your post, but I took medicine, and I know that this is a meat suit, and this is a nasty putrid meat suit. And the true Sherrie Saunders is the spirit. And when this meat suit's over, the spirit continues. And under the experience of this medicine, you realize that, yes, God exists, but guess what? You're God, and that God is within you, and that the power was there the whole time. And the church did not want people realizing this, because they were afraid that they would no longer go and tithe on Sundays. Because if you find out that you're as much Jesus Christ as Jesus Christ ever was, then that's bad for business. Because
there we are, back to business again.
They do not want you to know how powerful.
They don't want you to know how strong and how powerful you are. So the use of these entheogenics, it opens up that knowledge. And each time, I mean, I'm not doing this, what I do in ceremony, I'm not doing this for fun. People who attend true ceremonies, you need a puke bucket sometimes because of the amount of peyote you have to consume to get.
I was going to bring that up. Peyote, a lot of times it makes you throw up.
Oh, yeah, it's not pretty sometimes. So our church,
but
in the work that it heals. Oh God, in the drumming, the ceremony itself,
sound healing.
It is so healing. And once again, I want to give a shout out to White Wolf. I am extremely thankful to this man who he gave me information, Gail, and I did not know what I knew. Or I didn't know that the drumming that I was doing, what that even meant. I thought I was just a good drummer, and because I started drumming as a child, I didn't know what that meant until White Wolf explained to me the importance of using the drummer. The native drummer is the heartbeat of the soul of its people. The drummer drums you to war. The drummer drums you to help. The drummer. And so, once again, I don't understand what I did and what I ever could have done to deserve this opportunity that the Lord has given me, but I'm using it to my fullest extent. I not only want to heal people, I want to drum them. I want to drum them to help. I want to drum them to war.
I got to tell you something.
I'm just having fun living in this meat suit right here, being this person that called Sherrie Saunders, this spirit in this universe. I'm having a great time.
You guys got to read my Facebook post.
I just went to someone who does sound healing, and they use drums. And when I was there, I see visions and stuff like that. It just brings you into a whole different realm. And I never realized how important drumming is in the native culture and then you just added to that. Yeah, it's awesome.
Right.
Sound healing, it heals.
White Wolf said that I was a thunderbird, and I had to go look that up because I didn't know what it meant. And that one of the reasons why he has stayed in my life is because he said I was a thunderbird. And folks can look that up on their own. What that means is someone with a gift that in the past, when Native Americans would hold ceremony, they were very powerful. A drummer or a ceremony. I mean, in fact, the federal government in the 1800s, whenever the natives would hold a big ceremony, sometimes the federal government showed up and slaughtered each and every person that was there, because the danger that the federal government had, they had this knowledge that if the natives could hold a ceremony and put power into the ceremony, into the people, that change could take place. So the federal government would send its soldiers to not only stop a ceremony, to keep the Indians from having a ceremony, or to kill them while they were having the ceremony. So the ceremony itself in the Native American culture became something that had to be hidden, because if it was found out about, the federal government would shut it down, because the power of the drum. And what White Wolf has been trying to explain to me is that this gift that I was given, I have to learn how to use it. I can't wield it without knowledge, because it is a powerful gift to be able to move people into thought by drumming alone. So I'm very excited that I have been given this opportunity to be this person. I can't wait till I can say that as a shaman, a medicine woman, that I have removed my first cancer from someone. I can't wait until I can say that the drumming that we have done has created the revolution that this country needs, the awakening that this country needs. I feel here that I can drum that awakening into fruition. And
You
that's what I'm
can,
going to hope to do.
because I got to tell you something. This hound healer that I went to, who uses the drummings and
Yeah.
tuning forks and everything, she recently cured someone of cancer, brain cancer.
Yeah. It
Just
can
with the
happen.
sound, just yeah.
So it's part of the, I call it, I guess, research that I'm using. I'm excited here. Hopefully, when I get my income tax back, I'm hoping to get some bioresonance equipment. Sterling is familiar with what we're talking about there.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
work
want
a
to
lot
say,
with frequency too. I heal with
yeah,
frequency.
I don't want to say
Yeah.
too much on that until I actually have the equipment. But I'm hoping to invest my own income tax refund that I've been waiting to apply for. They're running into a little bit of a snag, but when I get that check, I'm going to get some bioresonance equipment, so that not only can I train in the use of herbs and natural ways of healing, I want to add the use of light, sound, and frequency into
Yes.
my medicine.
Oh yeah.
Because I know that the
That's the
future
way
of
to go.
medicine,
That
the
is.
future of medicine is light, sound, and frequency and energy. That is the future
Yeah,
of medicine.
that's why
where I
that's
wanna
why
go.
I do this right here is for one, this has certain frequencies,
Right,
certain light and
Wata, that's a
sound in it.
fifth phase of water. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
it's
that's
certain
Right.
the
frequencies.
phase that the body actually uses.
But
Right.
that's the future of medicine.
it is the future of
This
medicine,
is
and
like the
I'm excited to be. I, I'm excited to move forward with this plan, and to the research is for me, Gail. I mean, I'm selfish. I'm selfish because I have all of this skill and this knowledge, and I'm doing it for me and my kids. But it's not just for me and my kids; it's for everybody. But I'm doing it for me and my kids, but it's for everybody. And I don't know how other people would feel about it or think. I'm sure some people think I'm crazy to drop a whole bunch of
No,
money
you're
on
awesome.
equipment.
No,
But
yeah,
I
that's
believe,
awesome.
I believe
It's the
that
future of medicine.
it is
It
the
really
future
is.
of medicine. I believe that the Lord meant to put that in my hands. I believe that the Lord meant to put the drum in my hands, and all that I've done, the work, the activism, the advocacy that I've done for people, my knowledge from my time in the military to my time in the hospital, all of this was done for some reason, not just for
Definitely,
not just for this little old girl from Alabama. Everything was done for a reason, and I know that this opportunity that I've been given, that there's not many others out there like me. I don't even know who to go ask. I have friends like Sterling, scientist friends and friends in spirituality. I have odd friends, and it's an odd group that I'm with, but I couldn't find better people on the
We're
planet.
unique.
Exactly.
We're unique. We're the
We
woke.
are unique.
We're
And,
the woke. And we're
we
very,
We all have our experiences for
Yeah.
reasons that enhance our soul growth and our ability to help other people. That's
Right. And look, I enjoy my church. It's a beautiful place to be. We've got 6 natural waterfalls. We have natural water sources. Who couldn't love 40 acres of the most beautiful place on the planet with natural good water you can drink from the ground? And on top of that, we use the plants that grows on our property. We make our own medicines and poultices from our own plants. I can't imagine a better place to be.
Yeah, that's the most healing way is
where
when
we're
it's
at.
local. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, guys?
We're very excited at our church. We're very excited.
I would love to have you on again, Sherrie, and we have gone about an hour and a half already.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry. I'm wordy.
No, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry.
I've got a whole bunch of stories, Gail.
We're gonna have to have you on again for sure.
Yes, ma'am. I've had a great time.
I have too, and some of the things that you brought up are unique.
Well,
so got my jaw back up the ground here.
I've done several interviews, and each interview I always have something I like to drop that nobody's thought about or heard before. Once again, I'm very thankful that I'm allowed to be this spirit, this entity in our universe. Couldn't ask to be anybody else, and I'm very thankful for my friends, and I want to give a shout out to you, Gail. I've watched your work, and I can't believe that I'm now one of the people you're interviewing on your
Oh my God,
on
you're
your
special.
channel.
Thank you.
And I'm very honored to have had this opportunity to speak, and I'm very honored that Sterling and I are going to be working together with some projects that we'll talk about, more in the future. Like I said, I'm very excited that once I get this product in my hands, this bioresonance product.
I know. I want to know more about it too. So
Yeah,
we're definitely going to be doing more
Actually,
shows.
Actually, guys,
Yes.
I want to get Alex on. I want to interview him on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because he's fantastic.
Right. I spoke to him about, we've talked about his product, and something that he hasn't done that I'm going to add to this through the research that I do. I'm not only a medic of two-legged people. I've been a medic of four-legged since I was a child. And in fact, I prefer the four-legged creatures. Now I'm a chicken farmer, and I raise ducks, chickens, and pheasants. So now I'm back to two-legged again. But still, I enjoy working on animals. And I'm as poor as I am, I can't afford a veterinarian. So I do my own docking on my own animals. And so what research I'm going to start that currently we don't have is the use of biofrequency, light, and sound in treating animals. So even if it's only my own animals on my own farm, that's, some place for me to start. My phone usually rings with somebody with a sick dog somewhere that needs me to come help them because they can't afford a vet either. So that's usually how I get my patients, is people know me and say, "Are you busy? Can I tell you? Can I ask you a question, or can you ride out to the house and take a look at my horse?" So
I can appreciate that. I have to do my own vet work too.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's wonderful to be me.
I have 6 of them, so right now 7, but number 7 is got a home. But so
good.
We show how I do meditation and prayer and bringing golden healing lights and stuff on the animals. I'm sure you've seen them, Sherrie, those pictures.
Yes.
But it's so powerful. People don't know how powerful they really are.
Yes, and that's one of the things about having shows like this too.
Yes.
Bringing that out.
Yes.
Because that's why I do what I do, because I like to think this is stuff that people need to know. They need to hear. Right. And so yes. I'm just absolutely delighted to have people like you, Sherrie, and people like you, Sterling, to share your knowledge with others and to help them.
I hope people understand that the strength and the power that they have. One of the reasons why people have fear is because they feel they have no power. If you could understand how powerful you actually are, there would be no reason to fear. I fear nothing. I fear no man. There's no man I have to fear, because no man can do upon me this spirit, this entity that I am. No man has authority over me. Once you understand that, life changes and things change for you. That you lose the fear when you gain knowledge, because you understand what's really important.
That's so true.
And if people could gain the knowledge, and I hope that if anybody's watching, they do that. Once you lose fear, then the government and its propaganda and its control of big pharmaceutical over you falls away. You can fight it once you know that you have the strength to. And so I hope that people understand how powerful they are. There's no need to fear. You're the most powerful thing in the universe if you'll just accept it and open up to it.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Sherrie, and thank you, Sterling. This has been wonderful, and I'll be getting this up as soon as I can, and I can't thank you guys enough. And I do want to have you on again, Sherrie.
Yes, ma'am. I'd enjoy if you met my church, and maybe we'll have a ceremony next time.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Okay. Wow. Yeah.
That would be fun to come.
I spoke to we have musicians in our church, and at the last ceremony, I spoke to our musicians. In fact, there was 2 university professors that were attending our last ceremony, doing their own research on our ceremony through the research they were doing with the theogenics. So we're going to start recording our ceremonies for research. Up until this point, we had not recorded any part of our ceremonies. So we're going to start recording the ceremony, the music itself, because I think it's important that people hear the music that comes when people of like mind come together in ceremony and thought and prayer. It is the most powerful thing on the planet. And that is exactly why the U.S. government sent soldiers to massacre the Native Americans while they were having their ceremonies. So I appreciate the opportunity, Gail, that I was allowed to give that knowledge to people so that they can accept it for themselves and understand how important that they are and how powerful that they are. I love you. I don't know you, but I love you.
Yeah, I love you too. I love what
Y'all
you're
have a
doing,
good-
and love and light. That's what we're
Yeah,
about here.
I'm just happy to be here. I'm just happy to be here.
I am too. Well, I'm going to cut this off for now. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
And thank you for listening. And I'll get this up and I'll get a copy to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this opportunity, Gail.
Oh,
God bless
anytime.
America.
Thank you. God bless America. Yes.
God bless America.
God bless America.
Okay.
Once you cross